One introduction ROSEP view: the United States government was on track in the Biden administration to reduce the prices for both clean energy heat pumps and clean energy electric cars. Trump tariffs are expected to upset those plans to prevent future air pollution and prevent climate change. The United States government should, instead of certifying wood stoves as safe when they are not safe, go forward with regulations that ban wood stove use and direct government money for use of forest refuse only. For home building and furniture building, for just a few examples of use of forest products for non-burning uses, it is well known from scientific and medical research that wood burning is a substantial source of PM 2.5 emissions, yet the wood burning industry uses the scientifically debunked theory named carbon neutrality of wood burning to argue that wood burning replacing coal burning in industry, and in a trickle-down argument that wood burning should continue for home heating should continue. Presumably because it is called renewable, wood may be renewable in the sense that a tree can be planted in the place of a cut-down burned tree, but it takes centuries or decades for the newly planted tree to attain the stature of the cut-down burned tree. During those centuries or decades, photosynthesis, which converts CO2 to oxygen and so sequesters some carbon, will not take place at the same rate as photosynthesis was performed previously, and wood burning emits both CO2 and PM 2.5, and PM 2.5 is not absorbed by trees, so PM 2.5 is not diminished by planting a tree in the place of a cut-down and burned tree. In fact, a living tree closes its pores against the presence of PM 2.5 from nearby wood burning, just as humans hold their breath in the presence of PM 2.5 from nearby wood burning. And when a tree closes its pores, the level of photosynthesis that absorbs CO2 pollution goes down. Wood burning emits 90% PM 2.5 particulate matter of 2.5 micrometer size, the perfect size to infiltrate the human lungs, setting off a cascade of human health problems and early deaths. Contrary to many beliefs, wood burning emits 2.8 times the PM 2.5 as the fossil fuel coal burning, and wood burning emits 450 times the PM 2.5 as the fossil fuel natural gas burning. Replacing coal burning with wood burning creates more air pollution in the form of CO2 and PM 2.5 than coal burning. This emission data comes from testing the cleanest burning wood stove in the United Kingdom, the Eco-Design Wood Stove, and International Convention does not count the emissions from wood burning. The emissions from wood burning are erased from all countries around the world when calculating if each country has met its climate goals. This non-counting or erasure of wood burning emissions data from climate goals does not mean wood burning emissions do not exist. ROSEP view: purple air PM 2.5 monitors hanging from the eaves of the house of a near neighbor should be used to measure the level of PM 2.5 in the air hyperlocally in the yards of near neighbors of indoor residential wood burners. If PM 2.5 levels exceed World Health Organization standards of 5 micrograms per cubic meter annually, then that evidence of air pollution from wood burning should lead to the shutdown of that indoor residential wood burning appliance, one appliance at a time if necessary.
Hi, my name is Lily. Andrew gave you the intro to Residents Against Wood Smoke Emission Particulates and their concern for air pollution from indoor residential wood burning. Residents Against Wood Smoke Emission Particulates, or ROSEP, would like every near neighbor of an indoor residential wood burner whose wood smoke enters their yards and sickens the near neighbors to have a purple air PM 2.5 monitor hanging from the eaves of their home to measure the level of PM 2.5 entering their yards. That measurement of air pollution should be used as evidence of unnecessary air pollution, and each indoor residential wood burner should be shut down based on that evidence, one indoor residential wood burner at a time if necessary. The presentation by Andrew ended at 2 minutes 5 seconds. The same presentation by Emma starts at 2 minutes 3 seconds before the end of this podcast. So I am Lily, your timekeeper, and you can start the next podcast at 2 minutes 5 seconds in if you would not like to see the presentation by Andrew a second time. This presentation by me, Lily, ends at 5 minutes in. What you will see in the main content of this ROSEP podcast will be news about air pollution from indoor residential wood burning, and how that air pollution is being combated by ordinary people just like you who are unfortunately near neighbors of indoor residential wood burners at this time. There will also be news about unnecessary and highly polluting use of wood as fuel in industrial wood burners and preventable air pollution from wood burning wildfires. There will also be news about air pollution from PM 2.5 from gas-powered cars. There will also be news about airborne diseases which are also preventable with vaccines such as COVID-19 and measles and whooping cough, to name just a few. In 2025, Residents Against Wood Smoke Emission Particulates is also concerned with combating the Trump destruction of government funding for programs which protect human health through the Department of Health and Human Services, and Trump destruction of programs which fund the science and medical research plan to protect human health from preventable illnesses. Protecting human health is a patriotic act, and our defense against enemies is weakened if we are not as healthy as we can be. Heat pump rebates are now offered by the federal government, distributed through the eligible United States, are available in 2025, and are the best, cleanest, and now cheapest alternative to indoor residential wood burning if that burning is actually done to purportedly save money. Wind and solar as sources of the electricity that powers heat pumps and electric cars is also cheaper than burning wood. The adverse health effects that are caused by indoor residential wood burning also come at a cost to near neighbors, both in shortening and ending their lives, and in actual hospital, clinic, and funeral costs. Instead of being compensated monetarily, near neighbors should instead be able to achieve immediate relief by stopping indoor residential wood burning in their hyper-localized neighborhoods, which relief readings from purple air PM 2.5 monitors used as evidence of air pollution will help them achieve. Welcome to news about hopeful scientific and medical achievements that will also help us achieve the goal of clean air to breathe.
Webisode 57DHXZL, November 16, 2025. What to know about the election in Chile on November 16th. In Webisode 57DHXZL, 1 Trump-Epstein fallout, a high operating cost for author Michael Wolff, 2 RFK Jr., and lack of knowledge of science and medicine. The RFK Jr. cheer squad is getting restless my weekend with the biggest people against vaccination in America 3 shutdown. Why the Democrats finally folded this is how the government shutdown was always going to end 4 Trump-Epstein fallout. The strategy against Trump, that is. Actually working lawsuits and more lawsuits. 5 California Hollywood Matthew Baloney is yelling iceberg. On the Hollywood Titanic. 6 Maine mystery fuels unease in Maine woods who bought Burnt Jacket Mountain. 7 New York City and New Jersey opinion economists hate this idea. It could be a way out of the affordability crisis. 8 TV Democratic Nation, the Ken Burns PBS TV series The American Revolution speaks to our cultural clashes. 9 Theater New York City, Leslie Odom Jr. is back in the room where it happens. 10 Trump Epstein fallout. Epstein emails reveal a lost New York. 11 Trump lawsuit mirrored by Javis lawsuit. JP Morgan had to pay for the Charlie Javis legal fees and her restaurant bills. 12 Trump tariffs opinion. The Trump spending abuses are out of control. 13 RFK Jr. lack of knowledge of science and medicine. RFK Jr. walks a tightrope on Trump deal for obesity drugs. 14 Chile. What to know about the election in Chile on Sunday, November 16th. 2025 polls show right-wing candidates drawing the most support, but a recent compulsory voting law could bring a surge of new voters, adding uncertainty. Main content. Headlines from November 15th, 2025. The Nation, excerpted by ROSEP for brevity and clarity in relationship to residents against wood smoke emission particulates. A 501c3 nonprofit organization. Any brief fair use presented beyond the headline and involves ROSEP commentary, criticism, news reporting, or research, and is preceded by the word quotation. 1 Trump Epstein fallout, a high operating cost for author Michael Wolff. ROSEP view this article in The Nation magazine, which is sometimes called a member of the mainstream or legacy media, criticizes Michael Wolff, who is the author of 4 books about Trump. The editor of ROSEP has read every book. The Nation criticizes Wolff for the email advice Wolff gave Jeffrey Epstein. Wolff ingratiated himself with Epstein in order to gain access to the views of Epstein on Trump involvement in the Epstein pedophile universe. The editor of ROSEP appreciates the news value to American voters of exposing links between Epstein and Trump and does not devalue the method Wolff used to gain this first-person access. Wolff did not break any laws and maintained an appropriate distance from the activities of Epstein and Trump. This news would not exist except for these legal methods by Wolff of obtaining news relevant to the interests of all American voters. Quotation in the emails. Wolff appears to be positioning himself less as a reporter than as a media advisor to Epstein. I think you should let him hang himself. Wolff wrote to Epstein about Trump in December 2015. If he says he has not been on the plane or to the house, then that gives you a valuable PR and political currency. You can hang him in a way that potentially generates a positive benefit for you. Or if it really looks like he could win, you could save him generating a debt. In October 2016, after the release of a tape in which Trump boasted about sexual assault, Wolff wrote to Epstein that he could speak about Trump in such a way that could garner you great sympathy and help finish him. Wolff filed his own lawsuit in response to a Melania Trump lawsuit, saying that the first lawsuit threat by Melania Trump took his claims about Melania Trump out of context and was meant to chill speech. In the Michael Wolff authored book Fire and Fury, Wolff manages to attack the mainstream press for bias against Trump while writing a vitriolic take on the president. 2 RFK Jr. and lack of knowledge of science and medicine. The RFK Jr. cheer squad is getting restless my weekend with the biggest people against vaccination in America. ROSEP view this article in The Nation magazine describes the RFK cheer squad attending an RFK Jr. headed annual conference of the Health Defense of Children. CHD attendees included 1 Russell Brand, a UK media personality facing a rape and sexual assault trial. 2 Shirley Hines, the wife of RFK Jr., who is publicizing a book she wrote. 3 Andrew Wakefield, who wrote a scientifically and medically discredited and debunked study linking the measles, mumps, rubella MMR vaccine to autism. And 4 Brett Weinstein, an evolutionary biologist who has made false statements about COVID-19 treatments and spread misinformation about HIV/AIDS. The makeup of this gathering is no surprise to the editor of ROSEP, but reinforces the ROSEP perception that RFK Jr. should not be head of U.S. Health and Human Services, since his organization and its supporters continue to push scientifically debunked theories that negatively affect the health of American voters through the actions of RFK Jr. on down through the organization. American voters should be made aware of the threats to their safety that naturally occur if the head of U.S. Health and Human Services is not competent to carry out the aim of protection of human health through vaccination and education about the positive health effects of vaccination. Quotation, The Nation, November 15th, 2025. 800 people gathered for the annual conference of Health Defense of Children, the nonprofit, which is against vaccines, founded in 2018 by the current Secretary of Health and Human Services RFK Jr. Russell Brand, who is awaiting trial for rape and sexual assault in the UK and has pleaded not guilty, was on stage with wife of RFK Jr. Cheryl Hines to promote her memoir. Her publisher Tony Lyons was there in his role as president of Maha Action, a nonprofit that holds weekly Zoom calls to galvanize support for the RFK Jr. agenda. Also on the scene were Andrew Wakefield, who is infamous for his discredited 1998 Lancet study on the measles, mumps, rubella vaccine and autism, along with newer adherents such as Brett Weinstein, the evolutionary biologist. Interjection of quotation from Wikipedia. Brett Weinstein has been a prominent purveyor of false statements about COVID-19 treatments and vaccines and misinformation about HIV/AIDS. 3 Shutdown. Why the Democrats finally folded this is how the government shutdown was always going to end. ROSEP view this article in The Nation magazine represents a view that the cost of the shutdown and human suffering was beginning to exceed any chimeral benefit of continuing the shutdown to force the Republican hand. The editor of ROSEP believes that the exposure of Trump abuse of power in denying legally allocated food aid to American citizens led to increasing unpopularity of Trump himself and is directly tied to gains for Democrats in the Tuesday, November 4th, 2025 elections across America. Democrats also have the opportunity to shut down the government again in January 2026 as a bargaining chip against Republicans and Trump. Illegal actions. Quotation, The Nation, November 10th. 2025. This is how the government shutdown was always going to end. Republicans did not successfully pressure then President Barack Obama to defund his signature healthcare law when they shut down the government in 2013. President Donald Trump, during his first term, failed to persuade Senate Democrats to authorize his border wall in 2019, and over the past 2 weeks, a pivotal faction of Democrats abandoned their hope that Republicans would agree to extend insurance subsidies under the Affordable Care Act anytime soon. The next funding deadline will be in late January, and with it comes the risk of another shutdown. Yesterday, Shaheen was asked whether she might again vote to shut down parts of the government if Republicans have not relented by then. That is certainly an option, she replied, that I think everybody will consider. For Trump-Epstein fallout, the strategy against Trump that is actually working: lawsuits and more lawsuits. Rosep view the list of democratically led lawsuits to curb Trump budget cuts to provide tax breaks to the rich is long. This article begins with the Democratic lawsuit, one among many to halt defunding AmeriCorps, which employs the youth of America in various efforts that benefit the American people. The next lawsuit, deemed important to these lawyers working for Democrats, was to unseal the Epstein files. House of Representatives action leading to release of the Epstein files has been stymied by House Leader Mike Johnson at the behest of Trump. Now a vote will be taken this Tuesday, November 18th, 2025, to release the Epstein files. The rationale for release of the Epstein files is extraordinary public interest. Release of emails from the Epstein estate so far shows links between Trump and Epstein and his pedophile ring. Additional links provided by a House of Representatives. Release of Epstein files should provide additional needed information in the public interest. Interjection of quotation from Wikipedia. In 2022, Norm Eisen was one author of the book Overcoming Trumpery: How to Restore Ethics, the Rule of Law, and Democracy. Quotation, The Nation, September 2nd, 2025. After Attorney General Pam Bondi tried to put an end to the Justice Department revelations about Jeffrey Epstein, captains of the legal resistance gathered by Zoom in July 2025, Norm Eisen, a former attorney for the Barack Obama White House, convened lawyers, Democratic communication strategist, a neoconservative Trump critic, and a former chair of the Michigan Democratic Party. One of the biggest Democratic lawsuits in July 2025 was made to overturn the Trump cuts to AmeriCorps. On a second lawsuit, Eisen counseled other Democrats that they should move quickly. The Trump-Epstein story is the story of the Trump administration. Corruption benefiting his rich and powerful cronies at the expense of vulnerable people, Eisen explained on a Zoom call. In July 2025, the plan was to file a Hail Mary lawsuit to force the Department of Justice to release any documents in its possession that tie Epstein, a convicted child sex offender, to Trump. The Eisen team had already filed the request for anything that connects the two men under the Freedom of Information Act. The FOIA is normally a weak tool for unlocking investigative records gathered for criminal investigations, but Eisen had a legal theory because the DOJ had argued under pressure after the Bondi announcement that the extraordinary public interest in the Epstein case required the unsealing of grand jury testimony. They could argue the same thing, and that was just the beginning. Headlines from November 16th, 2025, New York Times, excerpted by Rosep for brevity and clarity in relationship to residents against wood smoke emission particulates, a 501c3 nonprofit organization. Any brief fair use presented beyond the headline and involves Rosep commentary, criticism, news reporting, or research, and is preceded by the word quotation. 5 California, Hollywood, Matthew Baloney is yelling iceberg on the Hollywood Titanic. Rosep view this article seems to be about the recent lack of interest by the public in the theatrical release of movies rather than movie release through streaming. Quotation, Mr. Baloney has become a narrator of the Hollywood industry troubles during the most transformative period since the birth of television, brought on by the arrival of tech companies and the disappearance of a lucrative cable TV model, followed closely behind by theater audiences. And that was before the pandemic and the strikes and the panic over artificial intelligence, AI, as the business struggles to redefine itself. 6 main mystery fuels unease in Maine woods. Who bought Burnt Jacket Mountain? Rosep view this article criticizes the lack of current public access to a traditional nature retreat, Jacket Mountain, previously allowed access of the public to this private land. 7 New York City and New Jersey opinion economists hate this idea. It could be a way out of the affordability crisis. Rosep view the price controls described in this article only refer to those that would affect rental prices in New York City and electricity prices in New Jersey. The editor of Rosep wonders if price controls affecting the entire nation have been employed successfully, and for what products, services, or industries besides rental housing prices and electricity prices. Quotation, Democrats dominated the November 4th, 2025 elections, but the other big winner was price controls in New York. The Democratic socialist Zoran Mamdani ran for mayor on a simple promise to freeze the rent, cementing himself as the affordability candidate and propelling his extraordinary rise to City Hall. In New Jersey, Mikey Sherrill, a moderate Democrat, scored a double-digit victory in the race for governor after proposing to freeze electricity rates after the results this month. Americans can expect more Democrats of all stripes to run on controlling prices. This may terrify many economists who have long dismissed price controls as failed policy, but like it or not, voters are demanding short-term price relief, and temporary price controls may be the only viable way to provide it. 8 TV Democratic Nation, the Ken Burns PBS TV series The American Revolution speaks to our cultural clashes. Rosep view this PBS TV series represents the best use of public funds to produce informative entertainment that promotes the ideas behind the American Revolution. 9 Theater, New York City, Leslie Odom Jr. is back in the room where it happens. Rosep view this revival of a Broadway play. Hamilton represents the best informative entertainment that promotes the ideas behind the American Revolution. 10 Trump Epstein fallout. Epstein emails reveal a lost New York. Rosep view the lost New York City of the recent past included the New York City-based corruption of a criminal enterprise headed by Jeffrey Epstein and seemingly supported at its height by Trump. 11 Trump lawsuit mirrored by Javis lawsuit. JP Morgan had to pay for the Charlie Javis legal fees and her restaurant bills. Rosep view apparently there is some sometimes a legal requirement of those who sue to pay legal fees, even when the person they sue is actually convicted of fraud, requiring J.P. Morgan payment of legal fees, plus unnecessary costs in this instance, in the cursory view of the editor of ROSEP, seems unfair. The circumstances that allowed Ms. Javis to win a ruling to have J.P. Morgan pay her legal fees may be more convoluted than the editor of ROSEP can glean from this article alone. In a way, this is reminiscent of the Trump claim that the American people should pay his legal fees of up to $230 million from lawsuits against Trump in the past. Besides using tax dollars merely to enrich Trump, this Trump claim demonstrates that the Trump rationale for becoming president was not to serve the American people and their interests in health and life, including working to slow climate change and including stopping air pollution, but the Trump campaign to become president was done merely to enrich Trump himself. Quotation: in 2021, J.P. Morgan Chase acquired the Charlie Javis startup Frank for $175 million. Ms. Charlie Javis had claimed her company helped millions of people fill out their federal financial aid forms after the acquisition. However, the J.P. Morgan Bank discovered that Javis had lied about most of the Frank customers. J.P. Morgan sued, and then prosecutors put Ms. Javis on trial. A jury convicted her this year. Along the way, Ms. Javis won a ruling that required the bank to pay her legal fees. J.P. Morgan has objected to the size of the fees in the past, and after her sentencing, it decided to try to cut her off. The bank is trying the same maneuver with her former chief growth and acquisition officer Olivier Amar, who was also convicted of fraud. 12 Trump tariffs. Opinion: the Trump spending abuses are out of control. ROSEP view: U.S. presidential spending abuses can contribute to lack of affordability for the average American voter. The main Trump spending abuse that is out of control seemed to ROSEP to be Trump spending on a potential war with Venezuela. Other main Trump spending abuses seem to ROSEP to be: 1. Trump stopping spending on Obamacare by not having Trump support extending the subsidies, and 2. Trump stopping spending on food stamps after 2026 by not having Trump support extending the SNAP subsidies after 2026, and 3. Trump stopping adequate spending on support for Ukraine in its war against Russian aggression. Trump not providing Tomahawk missiles to Ukraine is an example of lack of Trump support to our traditional ally, although the U.S. has the funds to do so. After the editor of ROSEP read this entire article, ROSEP adds that additional Trump spending abuses include Trump tariffs and withholding funds for electric vehicles and other measures to control air pollution, and withholding funds for scientific research. Picking and choosing by Trump on what to fund during the shutdown also unfairly resulted in salary payments to some federal workers, but not to others. Quotation: the Trump spending abuses are out of control. November 14, 2025. The Trump abuses of spending power fall into 3 categories. First, he has refused to spend money that Congress allocated. He avoided allocating foreign aid with a maneuver known as a pocket rescission, and he withheld funds for electric vehicles and grants for scientific research. Second, Trump has spent money that Congress has not allocated during the shutdown. He paid military troops and some other federal workers without congressional approval. Third, Trump has made arbitrary decisions that affect government funding. He has gutted Consumer Financial Protection Bureau with layoffs in some of these instances. Courts have attempted to stop Trump, but his policies remain in effect. While the cases wind through the courts, lower court judges have already done an admirable job ruling against the Trump spending decision on food stamps. Judges appointed by presidents of both parties have called out the illegality of the Trump actions using words like arbitrary, capricious, and disingenuous. The Supreme Court of today has been far too tolerant of the Trump steamrolling of Congress. The Supreme Court has stood by while Trump effectively cancels after the fact the agreements lawmakers make to pass a budget. What is the point of the appropriations process if the president can just undo it? The justices have fresh opportunities to return our system to order, including the ongoing case about the Trump tariffs. They should do so. 13. RFK Jr. lack of knowledge of science and medicine. RFK Jr. walks a tightrope on Trump deal for obesity drugs. ROSEP view: this shows Trump picking and choosing his support for GLP-1 drugs to aid weight loss rather than Trump focusing on drugs at least equally helpful to stopping disease as well. Also, the focus on a Trump deal implies a sort of privatization of access to GLP-1 drugs that could be problematic within the U.S. government. After the editor of ROSEP read this entire article, ROSEP adds that there could be additional Trump abuses from concluding a deal only on GLP-1 drugs, which include Novo Nordisk and Eli Lilly. ROSEP speculates that the compounding companies mentioned in this article, which sell cheaper versions of GLP, may first possibly be selling less effective drugs. There may also be a conflict of interest in compounding companies influencing the actions of RFK Jr., possibly to the detriment of the HHS traditional goal of protecting human health. Unfortunately, because of the demonstrated lack of scientific and medical knowledge or demonstrated rejection of proven scientific and medical knowledge by the RFK Jr. appointed FDA head, the editor of ROSEP is increasingly doubtful of decisions made by the FDA in this Trump era. Also, focus on weight loss drugs distracts from true threats to American health. From RFK Jr. vaccination denials. Quotation: some of the RFK Jr. supporters in the MAHA movement see a role for weight loss drugs, just not the brand name products sold by Novo Nordisk and Eli Lilly. They prefer cheaper versions of the drugs made by pharmacies through a process of mixing drug ingredients known as compounding. The chief executive of 2 compounding pharmacies in September joined the board of the Make America Healthy Again PAC, which has worked to mobilize support for the movement. Microdosing or taking tiny amounts of the compounded drugs has also gained traction in MAHA circles. Skeptical of the pharmaceutical industry, those proponents argue that standard doses are too large and cause too many side effects. There is no official definition of a microdose, though it is often considered to be around or below the recommended starting dose for Wegovy. That would be less than 0.25 of a milligram for the Eli Lilly Zepbound. That would be under 2.5 milligrams. The Trump FDA has approved the obesity drugs for use alongside changes to diet and exercise favored by MAHA, though it is not clear how many users follow that guidance. 14. Chile. What to know about the election in Chile. On Sunday, polls show right-wing candidates drawing the most support, but a recent compulsory voting law could bring a surge of new voters, adding uncertainty. ROSEP view of the 3 candidates, Jose Antonio Cast, aged 59, and Johannes Kaiser, aged 49, are Trumpists fascists, and Jeanette Jara, aged 51, is a communist like current child government leader Gabriel Boric is. Jarring to the editor of Razap that Mr. Kaiser has questioned the vaccination programs of Chile. Those views against vaccination by Mr. Kaiser echo those of RFK Jr. in the United States. Quotation, The New York Times, November 16, 2025. Ms. Jeanette Jara, aged 51, the Communist Party candidate, was a minister in the Gabriel Boric government 4 years after Chileans elected Gabriel Boric, a young progressive president many saw as the symbol of a new era for the Latin American left. The country now faces a deeply polarized electorate. The vote this weekend is expected to be the first of 2 rounds, as none of the candidates is likely to capture an outright majority. Polls show that the candidates with the best chance of making it to a runoff are Mr. Cast, aged 59, and because the right-leaning candidates will split the conservative vote, Jeanette Jara, a Communist Party member, Mr. Kaiser, age 49, is the founder of the National Libertarian Party. He has questioned the vaccination programs of Chile, opposed abortion, and argued for a minimal state role in providing for citizens, including cutting the number of ministries. Mr. Kaiser has pledged to pull Chile out of climate accords and the Inter-American Court of Human Rights. Mr. Cast and Mr. Kaiser are promoting the libertarian economic policies embraced by the Argentine President Javier Milei, who came into office pledging to attack inflation by slashing government spending and transforming the economy of the country. While Ms. Jara has condemned the Pinochet dictatorship, some of her opponents have voiced a nostalgia for those times.
Red Green Fox here. The quick Red Green Fox jumped over the barriers to clean air. Red Green Fox here. Ready to sing to you the names of the 2025 major wood-burning biomass industry subsidy opponents. 1. Biofuel Watch. 2. Bulkley Valley Stewardship Coalition of British Columbia, Canada. 3. Comite Schoen Luft, which means Beautiful Air Committee in German. 4. Dogwood Alliance. 5. Equity Group Foundation, nicknamed EGF. 6. Environmental Paper Network, nicknamed EPN. 7. Natural Resources Defense Council, nicknamed NRDC. 8. Prakaunia Narzexwisseski Isted, which means Workshop for All Beings in Polish. 9. Rachel Carson Council. 10. Solutions for Our Climate, nicknamed SFOC.
Cat's corner strategy with Tiger and Leone. Saying the quiet part out loud. Roar. Hi, I am Tiger. Our human asked us to get up from our naps and start Cat's Corner strategy with Tiger and Leone. She gave us a list of internet allies, which we will post for her here.
Hi, I am Leone. It is better for your mental fitness to go to these websites than to go to bro sites for advice. Substack letters from an American Heather Cox Richardson. Substack your local epidemiologist. The Midas Touch. The Guardian. The New York Times.
One introduction. Razap view. The United States government was on track in the Biden administration to reduce the prices for both clean energy heat pumps and clean energy electric cars. Trump tariffs are expected to upset those plans to prevent future air pollution and prevent climate change. The United States government should, instead of certifying wood stoves as safe when they are not safe, go forward with regulations that ban wood stove use and direct government money for use of forest refuse only for home building and furniture building. For just a few examples of use of forest products for non-burning uses, it is well known from scientific and medical research that wood burning is a substantial source of PM 2.5 emissions, yet the wood burning industry uses the scientifically debunked theory named carbon neutrality of wood burning to argue that wood burning replacing coal burning in industry, and in a trickle-down argument that wood burning should continue for home heating should continue. Presumably because it is called renewable, wood may be renewable in the sense that a tree can be planted in the place of a cut-down burned tree, but it takes centuries or decades for the newly planted tree to attain the stature of the cut-down burned tree. During those centuries or decades, photosynthesis, which converts CO2 to oxygen, and so sequesters some carbon, will not take place at the same rate as photosynthesis was performed previously, and wood burning emits both CO2 and PM 2.5, and PM 2.5 is not absorbed by trees, so PM 2.5 is not diminished by planting a tree in the place of a cut-down and burned tree. In fact, a living tree closes its pores against the presence of PM 2.5 from nearby wood burning, just as humans hold their breath in the presence of PM 2.5 from nearby wood burning. And when a tree closes its pores, the level of photosynthesis that absorbs CO2 pollution goes down. Wood burning emits 90% PM 2.5 particulate matter of 2.5 micrometer size, the perfect size to infiltrate the human lung, setting off a cascade of human health problems and early deaths. Contrary to many beliefs, wood burning emits 2.8 times the PM 2.5 as the fossil fuel coal burning, and wood burning emits 450 times the PM 2.5 as the fossil fuel natural gas burning. Replacing coal burning with wood burning creates more air pollution in the form of CO2 and PM 2.5 than coal burning. This emission data comes from testing the cleanest burning wood stove in the United Kingdom, the Eco-Design Wood Stove. International Convention does not count the emissions from wood burning. The emissions from wood burning are erased from all countries around the world when calculating if each country has met its climate goals. This non-counting or erasure of wood burning emissions data from climate goals does not mean wood burning emissions do not exist. Razap view. Purple air. PM 2.5 monitors hanging from the eaves of the house of a near neighbor should be used to measure the level of PM 2.5 in the air hyperlocally in the yards of near neighbors of indoor residential wood burners. If PM 2.5 levels exceed World Health Organization standards of 5 micrograms per cubic meter annually, then that evidence of air pollution from wood burning should lead to the shutdown of that indoor residential wood burning appliance, one appliance at a time if necessary.